who knows what? These are my general, always follow these rules kind of most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
No logs are the same, and logs typically don't saw up like marshmallows. They're going to have a little bit of movement in them. So we get a lot of questions about what's the first step on sawing any log. Well, we got us another whopper right here. It's not quite as big as that last one, but it's still pretty big. One of the things that you hear me talk about all the time is stress in the log, and how you should always try to orient the log so that you should always try to orient the log such a way to put the stress in either one plane or the other. You can almost say, for the standpoint of horizontal or vertical plane, and that puts it in a single plane in the boards. Basically, if you put it in the horizontal plane, or what's called the face plane, that's going to cause the boards to turn up. It's not what you want in high-grade lumber. If you put the stress in the vertical direction relative to the ground and the board, then the boards will have a tendency to move left or right or curve in the shear plane, or sometimes people call that crook. But basically the two boards move like this. That's what you want in high-grade hardwood, not what you want in framing lumber. It's two different things. The first thing you always want to do when you put a log on a sawmill is identify the first and second best face or any defects, and then rotate the log so you can get the best faced first and the planes of stress oriented vertically and horizontally relative to the board. The worst thing you can do is have stress like that, and then you cut the board and the board's going to twist. Twisted board's useless. I mean, you can use it and nail it up as siding or something, but a board that has twist is just really the worst of all worlds. So as part of that, when you see me sawing, you'll always see me rotate the log in such a way that the stress is either horizontal or vertical. In this case, you can see this great big stress track right here. And that means that the boards will always try, I shouldn't say always, are trying to open up that way, and that's what's leaving that crack right there. The boards are trying to open like a carrot peel. They're trying to do that. So depending on what you're sawing, that's going to depend on how you want to orient that stress. So for example, for high-grade lumber, I would like to orient as much stress in this direction so that the stress is perpendicular to the boards. These boards will typically remain flat, right? Because the boards are trying to go that way and that way. If you put the stress, they may try to crook as they dry, but they probably won't try to bow up. Now, once you get to the outside here in the sapwood and just the outer jacket of the log, weird things happen. And we've talked about that before. It has to do with the extractives and just various other things going on. But bottom line, if I saw these boards, the stress is going this way, And these boards most likely will have a tendency to bow. Very few logs are ever going to have full perfect faces. But what you're trying to do then is you look over the whole log and say, okay, which is the best face, which is the second best face. That's where you really need to concentrate on. And then you decide, am I sawing up framing lumber or am I sawing up furniture grade lumber? Framing lumber, you don't mind the boards bowing because most framing lumber is put on its edge. You want the edges to stay straight. Otherwise, when you put a roof and a floor on it, you'll have a wave in the roof of the floor. You don't mind the boards bowing inside the wall like the studs. You just don't want them rippling on the sheetrock. Furniture grade lumber, it's exactly the opposite. So I am going to be making furniture grade lumber. So the first thing I've done is I've identified what I think is the best face or the best figure that I want to saw. And then what I want to do is orient the stress perpendicular. So we get a lot of questions about what's the first step on sawing any log. Well, first of all, you got to get it on the sawmill, of course. But the reality is what you would really like to do, and it's just a habit, you don't even think about it, orient the stress, major stress crack, either perpendicular or horizontal, and that should isolate the stress in either one plane of the board or the other, and it should help prevent boards twisting. It's really important. Now, it doesn't stop it all the time, and sometimes you've got to just work on that part of it, but that's really the first fundamental thing as you're doing your rotations of your log. And in this case, I'm going to orient my stress vertically. I could easily do it horizontally. It just depends on which face I want to start on. This one just seems to be the one I like to do. And then when we square the cant up, the stress will be in one plane or the other. And as I start taking boards off, I'm gonna look for the stress and then try to start making adjustments. Stress in a log is normal. Probably 80% of them are gonna have stress. So just go ahead and orient the log on the mill as soon as you put it up there. I mean, don't even think about it. I don't even think about it. I don't think about a lot of things, but I certainly don't think about that. That's just like, just do it. You know, get in your car, put your seatbelt on. Just do it. Identify the stress and orient it. Things get a whole lot easier after that. So as we're cutting into it, you'll see me do some flips and whatnot, and I'll try to narrate it as I'm going along. We'll see how it goes. But this is something I get asked all the time, and let's just see how this log does. And I may have to make adjustments during the cut. I don't know. That's part of sawing. It makes it fun. No logs are the same, and logs typically don't saw up like marshmallows. They're going to have a little bit of movement in them. As a sawmiller, that's what you're looking for. It separates you from maybe the guy down the road who's sawing Pringles or potato chips that all come off at all different weird angles. I get asked a lot, when you're sawing a log, which end do you put to the front of the mill? Well, to me, it's pretty simple. It's the end that you're going to run out of room on, so you can cut it first. So I like putting the wide end to the front. Now, the reality is most logs I don't worry about it. But when I'm cutting a big one, I always want the largest diameter to the front of the mill. That way I can gauge where I'm going, how deep the cut is, whether I've got to do the scooch, like I talked in the one video, whether I have enough room on the idle side blade guide and I don't run out of travel. So the idea being that the worst part of the sawing as far as dimension, getting it through the throat of the mill, is right here at the beginning. As part of that, what I like to do also is I'm going to try to always leave an inch of travel. That's about 3 inches there. I'll back it up a little more. Always leave an inch of travel on your blade guide arm. Don't ever open it all the way up for the beginning of the cut. And the reason you do that is if you misjudge something, you're out of room. You got no forgiveness. Most times you misjudge the diameter, or you got a swell, or you got something weird going in a log. An inch of extra travel will get you there. So you'll almost never see me open my blade guide arm all the way. I'm going to stop within an inch, and that way if I'm about to get hung up or run out of room, I got a little extra margin. And you can also do what I call as a parachute cut. I'll cover that one of these days. Kind of an advanced move. You can tear up some stuff, but basically the same way you can accidentally generate a wave and get your sawmill band to go up, if you know you're about to run out of room because your throat is not wide enough to cover that log, as soon as you see that happening, you start raising the head nice and slow, and that band will come out. And you really need to practice that. The reason I call it a parachute cut, I mean, other people may call it a rising cut, I don't know what they call it, but the reason I call it parachute cut is it's time to bail out and get out of that log. Pull the ripcord and get out of it. And then I can come back later and try to figure out how come I ran out of room. There's really nothing more aggravating than getting 3/4 of the way down a log, running out of room, having to stop the sawmill, take a chainsaw, cut things loose, and get your band free. It's just not what you want to do. So there are techniques, but if you ever want to try it, that's basically it. Start sawing, slowly bump the head up, and you'll see that sawmill band rise all the way out of the log. I'll cover that one of these days. It's a little tense the first dozen times you do it, but after a while, it's no big deal. So I got the big end of the log facing me. The blade guide arm are not wide open. I've still got a little extra room. And I've got the primary stress in the log rotated either vertically or horizontally. Now it's time to start cutting some wood. It just started raining too, so just part of it. All right, let's make a few cuts here. So that's full open. See my blade guide arm? It's full open. I don't want it to be full open. I'm out of room, so I'm going to close it like an inch. That way, if I do run out of room, or if I can't clear the beginnings of this log, that means I need to make some adjustments then. I've got my chain turner up as a secondary hold down, kind of like a cradle. I got my two-plane clamp up, and I'm leaving my log loader arms up just for this. Now, I'll drop them down a little bit, but the main thing is don't run into your log loader arm. If something big happens, the log will not run off the side of the sawmill. I'm out of head travel here. I'm out of travel. That's still a pretty big log. Let's take a few boards and see if I run out of room. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Let's cut this bad boy. So you can see how much room I have. Got plenty. Well, if I needed more, I've still got an inch and a half of travel. So let's just see what happens. Take another. So you can see I still got some room. Got this guy about a half an inch maybe. But really that half an inch is an inch and a half. So I've done my rotation and the log is too wide, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of a scooch here. If you remember how we do that. It's gonna help me right there. I should get a 6-inch board out of that cut. Find out. Another one. Pull them back, see what we got.
That's about an 8. A little bit wide, but I don't know, with some of these defects, I'm definitely going to get a 6.
And remember that FAS requires a 6-inch wide board, which is what we're trying to get. So we'll edge those, trying to get into that color on this rainbow poplar. That's where the real gold is. So let's try to get to that. Remember, even though I flipped 180, the stress is still perpendicular. Do another one. Once again, I know this will be the last cut I'll make on this face because look, I am literally got a 1/4 inch left of room, but I've still got an inch of free travel. So I definitely don't want to go any lower because then I'll be out of safety travel. But right here, I'm actually I should be able to take that whole cut. I got room for it. But that's the whole point. Not only does that bail you out if you get into trouble, it also tells you, hey, this is probably the last thing I should be cutting right here on this face. So let's cut that and see if I actually have to move the blade guide arm. I don't think I'll have to, but it's going to be close on that far end. Let's find out. Just for kicks, since we're making a video, I'm not going to move it. Wow, that's close. All right, cool. Let me show you where I'm at. I'm out of room. Look at that. There's no way I would clear this log. About here, I'd be chopping it out with an axe or a chainsaw or a hatchet or something. Point being, yes, if I open it up all the way, I'll clear that, and that's what I'm gonna do. But it's better to run out of room when you're down to your last inch than it is when you ain't got any more travel left to go. So this is exactly why I keep that inch in reserve. I'll use it here to exit the log. This is the last cut on that face. I don't lose any time. I'll put the camera right here and I'm gonna open up the blade guide arm. I'll be able to clear that, but that's the last face. That's the last I'll be taking on this face because if I take another cut, I'm really out of room. I don't know if this makes sense to you or not. Hope it does. It's using that blade guide arm is just a really good indicator of when you need to be rotating on big logs and you're out of room. Gonna open up. Look at that. Finish the cut. No big deal. Everybody's happy. There we go. Set her down. If you look at my blade guide, this is where having a joystick adjustable blade guide really comes in handy. Obviously, I don't want to be cutting with it that far out. I mean, that destabilizes the band. So what I'm going to do, I got this joystick button right here. You can see this. You can see it go in and out. I like to set it just a little bit, I don't know, about there, a few inches. Now what's odd about it is my sawmill, there's certain places in your blade guide arm adjustment where it really likes to cut and cut flat and fast. With mine, that's about right there. So once a log gets kind of narrow, I don't really spend a whole lot of time monkeying with the width, so to speak. You'll almost never see me go in that narrow. The mill likes to cut right about there. I don't know why it does. Every mill I've ever owned has a certain spot where when you get the blade guide to a certain spot, it likes to cut.
Now, some of you guys might be wondering why I'm taking such a deep cut right here, but this side of the log has got a little bit of rot and decay to it. You can see how it's just falling apart. So you got mold right here. This log's been sitting a while. If I take too shallow of a cut, that board's going to have rot in it. Well, that's just a waste of time. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper, pick up the next board, and this whole thing's going to get disposed of. Now we're going to start taking some real boards. Look where the cut is relative to the stress. We may see these guys jack up a little bit. Remember, that's the major stress, like that. Let's find out what it's doing. The first board does it. We'll see if it starts to get a pattern. Then yeah, I'll start doing some other things. Yeah, look at the stress. Not bad. Let's take another one. So when I'm sawing, I like to judge my stress of the boards to be less than 1/8 inch per 8 foot. Kind of my personal range. When I'm sawing, since we know the boards are going to try to stress up this direction, when I'm watching that, I really don't like to have more than 1/8 inch of rise per 8 foot log. These are 8 footers. That's kind of my limit. So what I'm going to do is take a few more boards off, at least to the point where I anticipate I'll start right here and I can balance the cant, get the axis in the center. So if I just anticipate the time I get this thing squared up down here, I'm going to be right here. That distance needs to be about to that distance. So I can take a couple more boards off. As long as they're not bowing up, they're going to be flat when I dry them. They may still cup a little bit, but I can take that out with a planer. But I'm looking down here, and when I square this up, I want this to be in the center. But I'm not going to go roll it now. I just know I got to take a couple more to get there. Y'all following me? I'm confusing myself. That one's going up, maybe an 8. Can you see it? Going back down, I can tolerate that. Take one more. Try to get a close-up of that. Watch the gap in the board as the saw blade goes down the log. I'll go slow. I can't go that slow. I got to pick up the speed. See it? Get a little wider, a little wider, a little wider. Now it's settling down. Man, I'm going way too slow. It's going to mess this board up. That looks about right. Same thing, watch the stress. Make sure it doesn't rise more than an 8. If anything, that one's looking better. That one's getting out of the stress. That's good. Let's get rid of these guys. Now we're going to do a rotate. All right. Now we're going to rotate. Full 180. Get this rotten wood off of here, off this face. Pull it back.
Well, so this is what the board looks like. One of the ways to keep the stress down is to try to center the axis of the log within the axis of the board. And you can see, other than this discoloration, I'm actually in pretty good shape here. You look at this distance here. Actually, wow, that's pretty good. I'm not moving my fingers. Right here to there, pretty close. So because of that, what we want to do is continue to balance the cant. So and that's to reduce stress of any kind of twisting. So you can see that the distance here
is less than the distance here, which means we got to take a few off. Then you'll notice that the distance here is shorter than the distance here. So we got to take a few off here. The idea being that once we have a fully formed cant, this guy is basically in the center, and that's going to try to keep the warp and the twist down. Either way though, that's a pretty nice board. Another pretty board going on the stack. Those look pretty nice, don't they? Again, we're fairly centered right here. You look at the distance, it's not far off. So that will invariably bring up questions about, should we be parallel bark sawing, where we always saw parallel to the bark, which is typical for high grade lumber to keep the stress down. Should we be sawing parallel to the axis, or the pith, as some people call it, or the juvenile core? Both answers are right and both answers are wrong. That's where it's a judgment call. Now, if I've got a log like this where the high value wood is definitely in the center of the log, the high color wood, would you rather buy this board with all the colors? Or would you rather buy this half sickly look spalted kind of rotted poplar board? I know which one I would be buying. So that gets back down to where the stress is in the log. Remember me said I was kind of half expecting these outer jacket boards to get a little funky? The reason was because I was purposely not sawing 100% parallel to the bark. I was trying to compromise, trying to get where I'm somewhat centered and sawing parallel to the pith. However, as I'm watching, I'm making sure these boards don't flip up and go crazy. They did not. They stayed within my 1/8 inch tolerance of bow. I can fix that in the kiln really easy. And as you get in, these boards and these boards and these boards will show less and less stress as they get closer to the center. And they'll also show more color. I hope I'm not just boring you to tears with all these thoughts that go through my head as I'm sawing. The main point is the results. Do you want to go parallel bark, tapered, pith centered, however you want to do it? The main thing is the end result is whatever you're doing needs to match what your finished product's going to be, and you need to be watching the stress the whole time, and hopefully it's going to do what you anticipated it to do. So far this one's been pretty much dead on. They're not all like that by a wide margin. So then you have to have the ability to make adjustments on the fly. Now it's just a matter of dropping the faces to continue to try to keep the pith or the axis of the log centered in the boards. And that should reduce any chance of warp, I should say, any chance of warp or twist. And for high colored wood, it should provide me a prettier looking board and therefore more higher value. And if what I'm doing causes the outer jacket boards to stress a little more, well, they're not going to be worth nearly as much money. So I would rather take the deformity on the outer boards than the inner boards where the color and the value is on this log. Now, I got to say, as a general rule, the grade goes down as you get into the log, but the color goes up as you get into a log. So there's another contradiction. The logs are nothing but contradictions, and if you are trying to saw you're trying to run your sawmill by the fill in the numbers coloring book thing, you're not going to really do it right. And that's the fun of sawing. That's why I enjoy it. I like everything's different. Every log's different. You follow the rules until you know when to break them. So anyway, let's keep sawing and let's keep having some fun. We're obviously high here. There's more room here than there is right there. So we're going to take a few boards out. We're going to get it even, maybe go down one more, we'll see. Then we're going to rotate and take these guys. And then I may overshoot one board. There's no use stopping where it's perfectly even. You want to kind of go to it's a little bit over. That way when you rotate the next board, you'll be good. About 18 inches high, just in case you were wondering. Let's look for stress. Are you seeing any? Seeing a little bit negative was trying to curl back down. I can deal with that. So I'm going to take one more board here. We'll pull those off. Should be getting in the color on this one. Right there. See, this board will have stress if any do. Jacked up just a little bit, settle them down. Let's pull these off. Now what I'm going to do is start chopping this one down to where it's about like that. But for right now, we got to get this face about to there, and we are looking for the stress again. Got to get my camera. Very little stress. We got this one pretty well isolated. Actually, you can see just a little bit of crook, which is exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Let's do one more. You'll notice how they're all kind of coming off this direction. And the reason is because remember we talked about the stress being this way and that way. That means that's what's pulling these boards this way. That also means that since I don't have this perfectly centered, there's a little more power on this side and that side, and it slowly pulls the boards that way. If I had this centered up a little bit more, I wouldn't be doing that. Bottom line is maybe a 1/16 of an inch, so I'm not worried about it. What I'm going to end up doing now is, since the stress is moving the boards, keeping them flat, I'm not going to saw this face because I know those will jack a little bit. I'm going to go over here and saw this face, because this face should behave exactly as these, dead flat. These should be dead flat. Pull them off. So we're going to go down here and we're going to try this side now. We're going to flip over and see what that one does. The general rule, you'll have flatter boards sawing perpendicular to the major stress crack, and now I'm sawing perpendicular to the major stress crack. Let's see if these boards stay flat or not. Yeah, picking up my sawmill speed. Now the fun part is, so that one's sliding sideways a little bit. Actually, look at the line. You can see how the line is shifting now. Maybe 10 inches. All right, so this is cool as well. So remember how on the other face, the boards were going this way due to the stress? Now, look, they're going that way. So yes, it's real, and they're staying flat. Look at that. So now we're going to take a few of those We're going to see what they look like. These will most probably bow up a little bit. That's just the way it is. We're going to find out. Kind of getting on the short rows here. Starting to get a little bit right there. I'm gonna back out, drop these guys down. These are all about 10 inches wide. So I'm going to now cut this guy down until I get to my minimum 6-inch base for FAS high grade. Watching my display, I'm at 7, almost to 8. Get one more. Six and a quarter. Pull these off. And let's do a rotate. Always put the pitch board down, your dog board, that way if there is any stress, the boards will be flat. And the bottom board, the dog board, may be the one that's out of shape. Most of the time these pitch boards are discards, but if nothing else, they serve the purpose of a good place for you to hold on to while you're sawing down to the bed. They're always going to be the lowest quality, and if there is some stress, let them do the curving, not your high grade. So this is why we turn the dog board down. It's the lowest quality board in the pack. You can see the cracks. So as soon as I saw that, I flip it over and clamp this to the bed. That way, if it's got stress, then that means that I'm in good shape, because I'm probably going to throw it out anyway or use it for low grade. Guys, I hope this answered some of the questions y'all have about sawing for stress, not your stress, the log stress. Let me repeat. Sawing logs is not paint by numbers. There are things that you should know, things that you should see as you're doing it, and then that allows you to make adjustments up front. But some of the fundamental rules is, at least as far as I'm concerned, I mean, y'all do whatever you want, that's cool, is orient the pith crack or the stress either perpendicular or horizontal to the band. A lot of times that will keep you from getting
warped boards. Now there is one exception to that. If you have a log that's got a lot of knots in it, doesn't have a lot of stress, a lot of times you want to put those knots up in the corner, then sometimes you'll have to orient at a different direction. But as a general rule for high grade hardwood, you want to isolate the stress in either one plane or the other, and that lets you drive the cant how you want it. And if you get some weird boards coming off, you've done everything you can do to keep that from happening. So anyway, I hope this helps a little bit. If you have any questions, definitely comment. For those of you who know, I answer every single comment I get. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'm going to go to the trouble to try to answer it. There's a lot to this sawing stuff. You don't have to do it exactly the way I do it. You can do it the way you want to do it. It's up to you. That's the cool thing about sawing. But the end result is you want to have high quality wood. And in our case, I want really, really flat wood. And this is how we do it. Every log starts out the same way, unless we're quarter sawing, or unless the moon is full, or the earth is rocked off its axis, or who knows what. These are my general, always follow these rules kind of most of the time. Anyway, we will see you guys next week. Y'all have a good one. Thanks for visiting our sawmill. Click on the links above to see more of our videos.